Good evening and welcome to the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission Thursday, June 13th, 2013 meeting. On our agenda tonight, item number 1 is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone will stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 on our agenda this evening is the election of a vice chairman of this commission. And what is procedure for that? Is it just someone makes a motion for just nomination?
You just open the floor to nominations.
The floor is open for nominations.
I nominate Mr. Brognano.
Is there a second? Do we even need one?
Second.
Any other nominations? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I think. Item number 3 on the agenda tonight is the approval of minutes from the May 19th, 2013 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. The 4th item on our agenda this evening is a consent item. It is Lake Sapphire, which is a request for a preliminary plat approval for a 31-lot subdivision to be known as Lake Sapphire. This is quasi-judicial. So does that mean I probably should ask everybody if there have been any ex parte communications regarding this? It's consent, so
you could, and then if one of the members would want to discuss it, it would then have to be pulled off consent. If not, you can just go to voting.
Does anybody want to discuss this, or are we prepared to go straight to a vote on this? I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Let's move to the item number 5. We have 3 public hearings this evening. The first is IMG Citrus's request for a small-scale comprehensive plan future land use map amendment to redesignate plus or minus 2.16 acres and rezone them as well. I should ask if there are any ex parte communications regarding this. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
This matter is legislative. It's all right if they had contacted members of the board previously.
Very good. So,
as with the remaining 3 items, or 2 other items tonight,
very
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can you go ahead and take us through this, please?
Good evening. Salsan Rohani, Chief of Long Range Planning. Tonight we have 2 land use amendment rezoning in front of you. The first one here is a small scale amendment, and also they are swapping the land use and zoning of 2 equal size property. For a small scale amendment, for a regular amendment, we have to accept the application and process them only 4 times a year. For a small scale, they are exempt from that requirement. Also, it's a streamlined process. For the regular amendment, we have to send it to Department of to the state and then get it back and so forth. With this one, we don't have to. This is like a rezoning. It comes before you. You make a recommendation to Board of County Commissioner, and then the board would approve it. Also, the size of the property should be less than 10 acres, which is in this case. In the overhead, you see the property. IMG Citrus, they own this property here, and they have their operation right there. Portion of their property here contains some wetland. They would like to expand. However, they decided not to go through the route of getting the jurisdictional permit and expand to the wetland. But they went and they talked to a school board, and they bought this property for a school board recently. And what they are doing, they are taking out the portion of the wetland from the existing land use and zoning and swap it with the property to the north. That's why we call them the southern property and northern property. This is the existing and proposed land use map. As you see in the existing land use map, the property zone CI, commercial industrial, and the northern property zoned M2, which is residential. With the proposed, you see that the zoning swapped. And this is the zoning map, again, the existing map and proposed map. With the existing map, the southern property zone IL, the northern property zone IL, which is light industrial, by the way, and then the northern property zone RM10, which is multifamily residential up to 10 units per acre, and they're swapping that zoning. Again, the southern property become RM10 and the northern property become IL. Like any other land use amendment and rezoning, we look at all these criteria for concurrency, consistency with comprehensive plan, environmental impact, and compatibility. As far as the concurrency, this application is exempt from concurrency because they are not increasing the density or intensity. They are just swapping the land use designation, and density and intensity are going to stay the same. Also, as far as the consistency with the comprehensive plan, this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we noted some of the policies in the staff report. And the most important policy is policy 14.3, that they have to meet one of these 4 criteria in order to approve. And in this case, they're meeting the 4th criteria, which is a swap and a reconfiguration of the land use for 2 different sites. As far as the compatibility, actually we don't anticipate any incompatibility. The southern property that is going to residential actually is adjacent to their own property and also adjacent to a school board. Like to Gifford Middle School, actually, that owned by a school board. Therefore, as far as the school is concerned, actually RM10 is more compatible than IL. Also, this section, as I mentioned, is an environmental land, is a wetland, and they don't want to do anything with it. Therefore, there is going to be a natural buffer. For the northern property, they bought the bigger parcel from the school board, and therefore to the west of them is their own property. To the east is IL, which is light industrial. Of course, it's a railroad track and Old Dixie, and then IL, which is the same zoning. Property to the north is zone RM10, and that's the only area that they have to make sure that they're not impacting that property. Is right now is vacant, but whenever the RM10 they come and to be approved as multifamily, usually they could, with the site plan, they locate the building such that is away from the commercial or industrial. And also this property needs to provide the buffer between themselves and then the property to the north. Therefore, we don't consider any incompatibility. In conclusion, this request is compatible with the surrounding area, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, exempt from the concurrency test, and also there is no additional environmental impact. Therefore, staff recommend that you recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve this request. I would be more than happy to answer any question that you might have.
I have a question. I want to make sure I understand. The way it's currently, I'm going to go from south to north. The way it's currently done is it's commercial industrial, RM10, and then M2. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what we're proposing to do is go commercial industrial, M2. Is that right?
No. The southern property right now has commercial industrial land use and has an IL zoning.
Yes.
The northern property has M2 land use designation, which is residential,
Right.
and has a RM10
Right.
zoning. They are swapping these
No, but
two
north
together.
of that one is what?
To the north of that is RM10,
I know.
which is again is M2, which is again residential 2, and also RM10, which
So let me
is
go
up to
through it
10
again.
units.
From the south to the north, it's commercial industrial with a, whatever the zoning is. I'm talking about land uses here. Commercial industrial, and then it's M2 and then M2 is what it is now.
Yes.
To keep my land
Yes.
uses.
Yes.
And what we're going to do is commercial industrial,
And then
M2.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. So, all right. Okay.
Yeah, if the southern property contains wetlands and is going to serve as a buffer, why not rezone that conservation?
Again, this is a private property. Again, it's not designated as environmentally important or significant in a comprehensive plan. But the applicant themselves, they decided because it has some wetland not to touch it. And that's why their option was to just swap the land use and the zoning. They could have gone the other route too, but again, in this case, since it wasn't designated in a comprehensive plan, they decided to do just the swap. Again, in this way, they could expand their business without actually impacting the wetland.
Without impacting the what? Sorry?
The wetland, the southern property that they are changing the land use because it was a wetland and they didn't want to impact that.
I'm a little
one.
confused. On the one hand, you say that the wetland doesn't have any environmental quality whatsoever. Then you say they didn't want to impact the wetland. And then when he asks why it's not going to be conservation, you say it has no value as a wetland.
No, let me. I think Sasan indicated there aren't going to be any environmental impacts with this because the wetland is being changed to residential from commercial, so there won't be any impacts. The other thing is we really don't have a conservation designation that fits. We have C1, which is publicly owned conservation, C2, which is estuarine wetlands conservation, and we have C3, which is up xeric scrub conservation area. So we really don't have 2 for plustron wetlands. We don't have a conservation designation for that.
Does the property owner to the north of this property owner, are they made aware as part of this process of what's proposed?
Yes, them and everybody else within 300 feet of the property, they've been notified, yes.
I don't have any other questions.
You have to open the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody that wishes to speak on this matter, please come to the podium, state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, Bruce Barquette, here with Todd Howder, the engineer for the project, and we really just are available to answer questions if you have any. But I do think that you should get Ms. Johnson a real sign instead of that paper sign.
Be around for a long time.
Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter? I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting. Any of the commissioners have any additional comments? Questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes as recommended by the staff. We have a second public hearing this evening, which is the county-initiated request to redesignate plus or minus 70 acres from C2 conservation and L2 low-density residential to C1, which is zero density, and then to go ahead and rezone that. So you guys want to go ahead and explain that to us?
Okay, this is the second land use amendment and rezoning application tonight. This is a regular application. It's not a small scale. It has to go through the regular process. The property is about 70 acres, and they have several different land use designation, and all of them are changing to C1, which is publicly owned conservation, zero density, and I would explain that one a little bit more. First of all, regarding our comprehensive plan, is required by state law to have a comprehensive plan. We prepared the comprehensive plan and the state approved it in 1990. Then in 1998 and 2010, we revised the plan based on the evaluation appraiser report that we did for those years. Again, as I mentioned before, to apply for a comprehensive plan amendment, the applicant could do it 4 times a year in month of January, April, July, and October. This application was submitted in April of this year. For the regular comprehensive plan amendment process is a very long and involved process. First, applicant apply to the Community Development Department. Then we come before you for the first public hearing. You would make a recommendation to the Board of the County Commissioner for this one to be transmitted to a state or not. If you decide you recommend and the board decide to do that, then you would send it to the state and regional review agency. We get their comment back. Then we go to the third and the final public hearing before the Board of the County Commissioner. If they approve it, we send it back again to the state and regional review agency. And if nobody challenges it, then it will become effective in 31 days after that. This property is south of Oslo Road, north of 12th Street Southeast, and west of Indian River Lagoon. Again, it is 70-acre property, and the property was purchased in 2005 by the county for conservation. After the purchase, the county coordinated with the Florida Community Trust, and they basically reimbursed the county for 50% of the cost of buying the property. But they put some condition. One of the conditions is that the property has to be used for conservation and passive recreation. And the other one was that we have to change the land use designation of the property to appropriate conservation. And that is why we are here today. This is the existing land use map. This is proposed land use map. A portion of the property currently zoned Conservation 2, which is up to 1 unit per 2.5 acre. Portion of it is L2, which is residential 2, up to 6 units per acre. And if this is approved, then the whole thing would be C1, which is Conservation 1, 0 density. Again, here I have the existing zoning map. Portion of the property is zoned RS1, which is single family up to 1 unit per acre. Portion of it is RS6, which is single family residential up to 6 units per acre. And if it's approved, the whole thing going to be Con1, which is 0 density. Like any other application, we reviewed these 4 criteria. As far as the concurrency, again, this one is also exempt from concurrency because we're actually decreasing the density. We're removing all the density. It's going to be 0 density. It is also consistent with the comprehensive plan, especially with policy 14.3, because again, it's substantial change. If county purchased this property for conservation, and we would like to change it to conservation, therefore is a change of circumstances. As far as the compatibility, actually to go to conservation 0 density would enhance the compatibility, and also the property to the west of it is already C1. This is a continuation of that land use and zoning. As far as the potential impact on environment, current designation would provide a limited protection because again they have several different designations. One of them is a residential up to 6 units per acre. The other one is a conservation with 1 unit per 2.5 acre. Going to C1 would provide a protection of all the environmental quality of the land. Therefore, staff recommend that you recommend to the Board of the County Commissioner to transmit the request to the State and Regional Review Agency. And I would be happy to answer any question that you might have.
Any questions of staff? I'm going to open it. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. Does anyone here wish to speak on this matter? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any other questions or comments from the Commission? Do I have a motion?
I move we approve staff's recommendations.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The third item on our public hearings this evening is a consideration of amendments to the LDR, Chapter 915, Plan Development, change mixed-use development regulations to be consistent with revised comprehensive plan mixed-use policy, and also to delete an out-of-date table in Chapter 952.
Good evening. Stan Bowling, Planning Director.
This is an amendment to our land development regulations, two particular aspects. The first deals with mixed use. And comprehensive plan policy, future land use element policy 5.6 allows commercial and residential mixed use projects in certain residential locations, and that policy is being amended. Two of the items of the amendments deal with allowing fuel sales and allowing some upfront commercial development in mixed use. And the policy changes have been going through the process, the amendment to the comprehensive plan, supported by this commission back in March with some revisions. Those revisions have been incorporated into the amendment proposal going forward. The board looked at the revised amendments and supported them and voted to transmit them. And right now, a final hearing for adoption of the policy changes is scheduled for July 2nd. Staff's intent is to have these parallel LDR amendments go before the board also on July 2nd, so one hearing after the other they can deal with the comp plan and then changes to the land development regulations. The PD section, plan development section 91520, has mixed use regulations that parallel the policy and need to be consistent, so when the policy is changed, the LDRs need to be changed as well. The amendment that's before you this evening, the proposed ordinance, is consistent with the proposed policy 5.6 changes. There's also one other change that the staff is proposing with the ordinance, and it's really sort of a cleanup, minor amendment. In 2006, the ultimate right-of-way width table in Chapter 952, which deals with traffic, was updated, and that information in that table is valid and needs to remain in place. There's also in the appendix of Chapter 952 and what is now an out-of-date right-of-way table. It should have been deleted back in 2006, but wasn't. So we wanted to bring this forward to allow that to be cleaned up. So the proposed ordinance has a section in it that would delete the appendix, and that out-of-date table, the valid table, would remain in place in Chapter 952. That change to 952 is supported by our Public Works Department. The staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the board adopt the proposed ordinance with both sets of changes. Be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions? This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak? State your name and address for the record, please.
Joseph Paladin. I'm president of Black Swan Consulting and Entitlement Corporation. A couple years ago, we started working on some projects that I brought forward that we were asked to bring through as mixed use instead of commercial, and we went back and worked with staff, and they did a very good job, and we brought our projects forward with the mixed use, and all these changes we agree with and we support, and we're 100% behind staff's recommendations, and we ask you to go forward with this. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this issue tonight? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Any other questions or comments from the Commission? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I'm looking for my agenda here to see what the last item on the agenda is. Any commissioners' matters? There are none. Any planning matters?
Just a few, Mr. Chairman. As I think probably all of you have heard, George Hamner did essentially retire from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and staff certainly appreciates his service. And he came around and said goodbye to us and also introduced us to Jordan Stewart. I want to welcome Jordan here to the Planning and Zoning Commission. He went through, like all of you all, his Planning and Zoning Commission orientation. You know, we tried to indoctrinate him, but I think we probably failed. But we're available to with any for any questions, and we wanted to welcome you, Jordan. Coming up next Tuesday at the June 18th board meeting, they will hear the commercial vehicle and RV land development regulation amendment you all had a motion on at a previous meeting, and all the the residents and interested parties have been contacted, and your discussion has been reported to the board. We'll see what their desire is for that. Normally, we would have a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on June 27th. We will be canceling that. We don't have any matters that will be coming before you all. But we will have a July 11th meeting. And we do have a traditional neighborhood design project that's tentatively scheduled for that meeting. So that maybe you want to arrange accordingly. And also on July 2nd, the Board of County Commissioners will be looking at the LDR amendment that you all just made a recommendation on in the Policy 5.6 change. And those are the only matters I had, Mr. Chairman.
I had a question. What are you guys starting to see in your pipeline, just in terms of the county? Are you seeing an increase, and in what sectors?
A few things. I would say, first of all, in terms of single-family permitting, we've seen a bit of an uptick from a very big drop and a very flat bottom. But it's been pretty consistently ticking up in the county, and also we've noticed Sebastian's issued more single-family permits. That's up a bit. We're getting more kind of forensic engineering requests to bring back projects that were partially built, residential projects, and Lake Sapphire getting redone and retooled. That's probably one of the very few subdivisions you all have seen in a few years. The T&D project coming before you all is 481 units. That's the first big project since probably, I'd say, 06 or 07. So we're starting to see some activity. Commercial, we're definitely seeing some site plans that are below the threshold to come to you all. They're not large, but convenience type of retail, some additions to bigger retail. So we're certainly seeing some activity.
Not to the point yet where you guys are staffing up your department, or is it starting to get there? We're starting to get there.
No.
Okay.
Not to staff up.
We are seeing a little more in building, and particularly with commercial, there's a lot of commercial that doesn't come through us, particularly tenant build-outs, and building is seeing more of that, and we are staffing up in building. We've hired an additional inspector/plans examiner, and we're in the process of hiring another front counter person, a building support specialist. And I'm not sure if you know, our building official resigned about 2 months ago. He actually took the job with Indian River Shores that became open, so we just hired a new building official. But in building, it has increased enough that we are staffing up a little more.
So we might start getting a little busy, perhaps, to start getting a little busier up here in the next 9, 12 months.
Yeah, and I know you know as well as anyone, from a land development standpoint, particularly with single-family residential, we've got to get rid of the inventory that we've got now that is really going down pretty well. And the prices have to go up enough so that the cost of the land and the infrastructure is such that it at least is marketable out there. And I don't think we've quite seen that yet, but we're getting pretty close, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Stan, are these changes reflected in your weekly update, the weekly update you send?
Yeah, the quasi-judicial list will contain many of the kinds of projects that are staff level approval, and you all wouldn't see unless they were appealed.
All right, so we can kind of track.
That's correct.
With your weekly update.
That's an excellent way to keep
which
track.
Is very helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Glad you guys enjoy it.
Thank you for planning matters. Item number 8, attorneys matters.
None, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you. We are adjourned.